everyone, I'm Shaylin with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about line editing. Line editing is polishing up the sentence level of your book to be as clean, efficient, and effective as possible. Here are a few really easy things that you can implement and look for in order to make your prose just a little more shiny. Number 1, the words that, just, and only. Especially with that and just, these words are often redundant and don't add anything to a sentence, so you can do a search in your document and try to cut out as many as you possibly can. Number 2, weak to be verbs. To be verbs often weaken a sentence because they don't tell us anything about the subject or the action. If the subject can be doing anything other than just being, it's probably a more interesting sentence. To be verbs can also often lead to telling. You could say the vase was shiny, or you could replace that with the vase gleamed, or the vase shone. You could say it was a rainy day, or you could get rid of the was and the telling and say rain drizzled from the cloud. 3, ing verbs. Often the present participle is paired with a to be verb and you can get rid of both. For example, you could say I was running away from the dog, but that could also just be I ran away from the dog. It's fewer words and it's a lot cleaner. Number 4, the word of. You could say a vase of flowers sat on the desk, or you could just say a flower vase sat on the desk. It's a really tiny thing, but especially if you're trying to cut words, you could probably cut a lot of. Number 5, the words up and down. These are often completely implied and so we don't need them. Instead of saying she sat down on the floor, you could just say she sat on the floor because we know she didn't sit up on the floor. 6, illogical uses of as and while. Now, as and while are not incorrect or wrong to use in themselves, but often they're used incorrectly. If you use these words, make sure the actions are actually simultaneous and not happening in short succession. 7, vague words. These are often words with some or thing. Words like some, something, somewhere, kind of, sort of. These words are vague, so they can lead to confusion or clarity issues, as well as making the narrator sound unsure about themselves. If there's a something, see if you can replace it with an actual concrete thing. If there's a somewhere, see if you can replace it with an actual concrete place. If there's a kind of, see if you can just delete it. 8, weasel words. Weasel words are words that don't add anything to a sentence, and they're often ly adverbs. Think apparently, essentially, really, obviously, basically, very. Literally, definitely, certainly. Any words like that are often completely redundant. 9, suddenly, start, begin, then. Really anything that indicates the beginning of something. If we see an action begin, we know that it began, so we don't have to be told that it began. If someone barges into a room, we don't have to say, suddenly he barged into the room, because we know that he barged into the room, and the verb barged tells us that it was sudden. 10, redundancies. For example, I held the mug in my hand. This could just be I held the mug because we know that it's being held in the person's hand. Copy editors often refer to redundancies as dead wood that needs to be pruned. Some examples of redundancies where there's an extra word being added that doesn't add anything are close proximity, final outcome, follow after, past history, plan in advance, sufficient enough, total annihilation, and the list goes on and on. There are so many phrases like this that we use in our daily lives, but they're actually quite redundant. Another type of dead wood is circumlocations. This is when many more words are used to circle around to the point than needed. For example, a large proportion of could just be many. Instead of saying are in possession of, we could just say have. Instead of saying at this point in time, we could say now. In spite of the fact that could be although. In the not too distant future could be soon. So let's look at some examples within a sentence. The original sentence might be, she said she would take the plan into consideration. This could just be, she said she would consider the plan. When pruning for dead wood, this doesn't mean that you have to cut every single possible redundant word. Sometimes it really could impact the meaning or clarity, or it could make the sentence read awkwardly. Sometimes fewer words doesn't sound as good, or the point is lost. However, if the point remains and the sentence is clearer and stronger, the extra words should probably be cut. Next up, filters. Filters are a form of telling that distance the reader from an image. If we're in Lucy's point of view and we say Lucy saw a plane soar overhead, we could just say a plane soared overhead because we know Lucy has seen it because we're in her narrative voice. These are experiencing words like feel, see, hear, taste, etc, etc. I'll find a list of filter words and leave it linked in the description. Another thing to be on the lookout in your line edits is point of view slip-ups. Especially in third person, authors often make little point of view slip-ups that don't really make sense. This could be showing something that the main character can't see or doesn't know, or accidentally briefly slipping into another character's thought. But it can also happen in first person. A common one would be having a protagonist in first person saying, "I blushed." They actually can't see themselves blush, so it might be more accurate to say, "My cheeks warmed." This is a bit nitpicky. Some people might not think it's a problem. Some people might think it is a point of view slip up. But if you do notice these kinds of things, especially in third person where they really can be very illogical, it's a good idea to try to cut them. Weak adjectives and adverbs. Adverbs are a big point of contention in the literary community, but I do think if they're weak, they should probably go. Some adverbs and adjectives are really strong, but a lot of the time they're really not necessary. Many are completely obvious, so therefore redundant, like "he screamed angrily." We can probably tell from the context and from the verb screamed that he's angry, so we don't need to say that he screamed angrily. So those are some easy ways to clean up your line and things to be on the lookout for when editing your sentences. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.